Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Jolly, and I'm a senior account manager at Obsidian Public Relations. And I'm joined by Betsy McKay of Salt, Style, and Events. And we're here to talk with you about the event planning journey. So, everything from ideation all the way through to execution. So, I'd like to open by Betsy explaining a little bit more about your business and what you do.
Hi, Taylor. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Betsy, and I am a full service event planner. As you mentioned, my company is Salt, Style, and Events. I'm based here in Memphis, Tennessee, but do events here and in the Mid South and all over. So I really just focus on personalizing events to what the client's goals and visions are.
And that's a perfect place to start because at Obsidian, that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on is really listening to clients and helping bring their ideas to life. And I don't think that there's any tactic that is more clear in than event planning. And so talk with me a little bit about that first meeting with the client, building that rapport and starting to understand what they need so that the relationship gets off on the right foot.
Sure, absolutely. Rapport is the single most important thing when event planning to make sure that you have good, clear communication with clients from the get-go. One thing I love to do is meet clients for coffee. And if maybe, time is an issue or location is an issue, I'll do a video call just because I feel like that face-to-face is so important. And so this very first meeting is where I really get to know them, get to know the goals of the event, kind of what they're envisioning. And it's a chance for me to meet that corporate planning team so I know who all is going to be involved throughout the process.
That's really similar to what we do. It's that kind of initial communication analysis, trying to feel out where they're going with an event. For us, a lot of times it's from the communication standpoint to make sure that we're getting in front of the right audiences. But that also informs all of our event planning to make sure that the caliber of catering that we choose and the location fits with the needs of the event and their audience. So you talked a little bit about that corporate event planning team. When you sit down with them for the first time, or maybe it's that second meeting, what kind of questions are you asking them about their event needs to really get down to start the planning process?
Sure, absolutely. One of the number one things that we talk about, and is sometimes, an uncomfortable thing to talk about, is the budget, because that's just going to be that driving factor in everything we do, from vendor selection to venue to how we're reaching the target audience. So, that's established pretty early on. And then really finding out, what is the goal of the event? Is this just something that's like fun and we're trying to create corporate culture? Or are we trying to gain a new audience? Is it a sales meeting? So just figuring out, what the goal is of the event so that we can make sure we're, doing our best to meet that goal.
Absolutely. And I think, budget, like you said, is the big elephant in the room. And so when you meet with a corporate team and you find that their budget is maybe smaller than anticipated, or that it may not go as far as they think that it would, how do you help then work through priorities and making an event work within a budget that's reasonable?
Sure, absolutely. So being in the business for as long as I've been in, pretty early on, I can figure out if a budget is, realistic or not. Depending on the package that the client chooses, I can even create that budget for them before we even get started so that they can know, okay, I need, this kind of range of money to make, to pull off what we're trying to plan. But oftentimes clients come to me with the budget already in place. And so I'll take a look at that and always start with asking, what are your top goals? Is it the way this event looks? Is it your entertainment? Is it food and beverage? So that I know, where do we want to allot the most of those, those dollars, and figure out where we need to start. So yeah, budget is crucial.
That's something that we find too, oftentimes with my clients. When we're looking at budget, we're either trying to fundraise or we're trying to maximize attendance so that we can get the most out of every dollar that we invest. And so trying to, like you said, determine, is it the feel of the event that we want people to walk away with? And if so, maybe we need to invest more in the linens that we choose and the seating arrangements and the plating. But if it's really delivering a message, then let's make sure that we've got the best video equipment available, that we've got speakers lined up who are going to really knock it out of the park so that when people leave, that they take the message away. So like you said, I think it all really depends on listening, looking at the budget, and then saying, how do we work with what we've been allotted?
Absolutely.
So when time comes to start booking vendors and looking at venues and really starting to sign those contracts, what are some of the pitfalls that you might consider when you're considering vendors and navigating timing and really starting the planning process.
Sure, absolutely. So, corporate clients, there's a lot of similarities to private events such as weddings, but there's also a lot of differences. A lot of my private clients or my wedding clients, we start planning 2 years out, year and a half out. With corporate, it's a little bit different. I feel lucky if I can get a 6 month time frame to plan in. That is my dream for corporate, but sometimes that's even a long stretch for them. They might have an annual event that they're planning and they're trying to figure out their budget from the year prior and the funds they have for this upcoming event. So, timing is so helpful in this process. Like I said, 6 months is ideal. We've certainly done less. But that way you kind of have time to figure out the budget, reach out to those vendors who we have relationships with, who we feel can pull off the vision within that budget. And then I always start with vendors who maybe will only take one event a day. People like entertainment, photography, keynote speakers. I like to start with them and get them on board first. And then we can move into the details like rental items, flowers, catering, because those folks can typically do more than one event in a day.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can think of some recently where we've been trying to book a venue and navigating the venue that we want being booked, but really needing to book the entertainment and those two dates not working together. And so, like you said, the earlier that we can get started is always better. But I know sometimes for corporate clients, when maybe you're holding 3 or 4 events in the year, thinking about that fall event when you're still in the midst of planning for your spring event, it can be too challenging for a team to navigate that. So that's something that we've also experienced. And while 6 months would be beautiful to build a communication and event plan, I don't know that it's always realistic. But I love
Right.
your suggestion of trying to find those folks who we know we absolutely want to have, but may only be available for one specific event a day.
Sure.
So event planning can be managed through partners like yourself and like Obsidian. But that doesn't mean that the client is off the hook for making decisions. And I know that when you're not used to planning events and you are looking at things like, should I be getting, 8 top tables, or do I need bistro tables, or should I do stations or a buffet? They may not know what decisions they need to be making and how that could impact their event. So talk with me a little bit about how you guide clients through the decision-making process as an event expert.
Sure. Well, number one, I'm always ecstatic when I find that there's a promotion team like Obsidian or marketing team on board, because that is so important for creating that kind of brand of the event. Number one, a lot of my ideas for like the decor and overall feel will come from like maybe a social media flyer you've created for them. So I love, love, love to have that branding. And I also know that we're going to work hand in hand on the promotion, getting the people there, the bodies in the seats. I always like to help cross promote. So that is a dream when we've got event planner working with promotion planner. But then you're absolutely right. Within that corporation, there's going to be an event team. Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's 10 people. I always ask, in a perfect world, if I can kind of be on the phone and have video calls and face-to-face meetings with just 1 or 2 people, preferably the decision maker. That just helps things, it just speeds up the process, honestly. And then typically what I recommend is that we have monthly calls with like the larger team to do a recap. Here's what my company has, established this month. Here are things that we still need to do. And then there might be tasks within the corporation, such as like, finalizing the guest list, things like that. So just knowing and managing everyone's expectations. But communicating with 1 or 2 key people is awesome, because, sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen. So I found that is a great way to work with a team.
I agree completely. And I have been on event planning calls where we have the entire board of directors and the chief executive, as well as the marketing person who we're coordinating with. And that is not the ideal time to be selecting a menu. That's really the time where you want to be presenting a menu. And I can say the same about invitations. So that's something that I talk with clients a lot about is we need to push your event. We're trying to do it 8 weeks out or 6 weeks out, depending on the event. If we're doing a save the date and then a formal invitation, are we going through the mail or are we doing it via email? and having somebody who's okay to edit and review that content is critical. So having that one point person, even if they're kind of hands off because we're helping with the event, that one person to okay the content, to make the decisions, really keeps the process moving. Otherwise, you can get caught up in the details because, as we both know, there are a lot of details to throwing a successful event.
Yes,
But
there are.
so with that, as you get closer to the event, week of, day of, things can be really hectic. So can you talk a little bit about your role on the days leading up to and the day of the event, and how that can really change the event experience for an attending client?
Sure, absolutely. So a lot of times people have this misconception like, oh my word, you're an event planner. That must be so crazy, so chaotic. And I always like to think, well, that's why you're hiring a professional, so that it's not crazy, it's not chaotic. One of the most beneficial things that a professional planner should provide is a very detailed timeline or run of show that can start a month out, that can start a week out. It could be just a couple of days before the event. But this is kind of a blow by blow, down to the minute, what's happening when, who, what, when, where, why. And so your planner will, send a draft to those key players for approval. And then I like to send this out a week prior to all of those involved. To catering, entertainment, the venue, all the key players, so that they have at least a week to reach out to me like, wait a minute, red flag, how's this going to work? So that I can talk them through everything. And it's also so beneficial being that I might have just myself there, or maybe one or two event managers working with me, to where, there's 100 vendors and maybe just my small team. So we've got this great guide that's like, oh, okay, it's 5 o'clock. This is what's happening when. So that is, very helpful with the process. And then just knowing that your event team is going to be on site to handle, load in, logistics, the event starting, everything running smoothly. So we're not just going to show up and the event starts and say good luck. We're there start to finish.
And I think that the biggest difference with having a professional event team there is, and I know, having planned my own wedding and then also working corporate events, there's always something that is presently not happening the way that it should be. And
Right.
You don't want the client or the guest to catch on that you are fixing something, but it always tends to be something. The live stream is not working. The PowerPoint presentation is version 2 and it should have been version 3, or what have you. And so
Right.
having that run of show to ensure that all of the things that are perfectly lined up are running perfectly gives you the ability to make those on the spot decisions, correct things that maybe got a little bit crossed wires, and so that the client and the guest attendees ultimately never see or realize that something is not exactly as it should be.
100%. No, that is the role of your event planner. 100% something will not go as planned. Knock on wood. I always, like, every event day, I'm like, what's it going to be today? There's going to be a missing linen, or the caterer forgot a food item. So it's my job to handle those, issues without everyone getting stressed out, without everyone being involved. So that is a huge benefit. And then something else I like to bring to the table is, the corporate client I might be working with, of course, will have that event team in place that's been helping, with the planning process along the way. But it's always my goal for on event day for that team to be able to show up, look pretty, be refreshed, and just mix and mingle. There's probably potential clients they need to rub elbows with. So it's, very much my role for them to be there. And of course, know what's going on, but very much just be an attendee and enjoy themselves and let me handle the details.
From a PR perspective, I could not agree more. What we're really trying to do is tee our clients up to have those important conversations, to talk with their big donors, to sit with their out-of-town client who've come in for this event, and also so that the client walks in and confidently knows how to engage with this event. So making sure that we've delivered communication materials that clear up all of the details, from parking to which door to enter to will you be assigned a table at check-in? Is there a check-in? Do you need to wear a name badge? All of those tiny details from a PR perspective, making sure that we're communicating with folks on the front end so that they're not coming up to my client and being like, hey, so I think I'm parked in the wrong spot. Am I going to get towed? Those are the kind of things that we want to avoid by creating really clear and consistent communication around attending event, so that the client can focus on the purpose of the event and achieving the goals that we outlined from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, Betsy, is there anything regarding corporate events that you think is a pain point or that we haven't covered that folks should know about to enter event planning season, whatever that is for them, with confidence?
No, I think the only real difference between private events and corporate is, obviously corporate and nonprofit events were a little slower to come back since the pandemic. And so it's not very realistic for corporations to say, well, back in 2019, this was the budget. There's been so much growth and change in the event industry just because when events came back, they came back with a bang. There's more events now than we've ever had. But unfortunately, there's also a lot of inflation going on. So like a ton of market change, even from day to day with food and beverage costs, things like that. So just coming into the process, being patient, knowing that there's been a lot of change and not, we used to be able to say, this is how we did it in 2019. So that budget's going to carry over to 2020. That unfortunately is not so easy these days. So just being open-minded, patient, and then again, like we said, having a budget or hiring a planner who can create that budget for you and giving your team the most amount of time possible for planning.
And I think along with the kind of events coming back slowly from the pandemic, what you did in 2019 may not work or may not resonate with folks in the same way that it did. So bringing in folks on the very front end to help you say, hey, we've seen people try to bring events like this back. These kind of things are falling flat. Let's bring some new ideas and really invigorate this event and this conversation. So really, it helps to have support from the very initial stages before you ever book a vendor all the way through the day of your event.
That's right.
Wonderful. Well, Betsy, can you tell folks a little bit about how to find your company and learn more about you if they're interested?
Sure, absolutely. I have a great website, saltstyleandevents.com. My contact information with my cell number and email is there listed as well. Like I said, kind of, I like to have an initial phone call with corporate clients. And then if it feels right and my packages are what they're looking for, then we just jump right into that coffee meeting and get going.
Wonderful. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to connect you at Obsidian. Betsy, I really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks so much, Taylor.